I thought betrayal would come from enemies, but mine came from the people I loved the most, my husband, my sister, and even my only daughter. They destroyed me in ways no stranger ever could. Let me tell you how a single truth made my knees collapse and my soul never rise again. I spent years believing my marriage was strong, never suspecting the man I loved was planting daggers in my back. You see, when you are young and in love, you don't question the little cracks that appear in the walls of your home. You patch them up with hope, with trust, with prayers whispered at night. I gave my life to this man. I cooked his meals, washed his clothes, bore his child, and held his hand through storms. I thought we were building something together, something solid, something unshakable. Every morning I would wake before him, prepare his tea just the way he liked it, and remind myself how lucky I was to have a husband who worked hard and who put food on our table. At least that's what I thought. I never let my mind wander to darker places. Why would I? Trust was my foundation, and I believed in it with the innocence of a fool. Looking back now, I see all the little signs I ignored. Nights when he came home late, clothes carrying scents that didn't belong to me. Times when his eyes wandered, but I brushed it off, convincing myself that I was imagining things. I wanted to protect my heart, so I closed my eyes to what was in front of me. A woman who trusts too much is like a bird who keeps feeding the snake, thinking it won't strike. I remember one evening in particular, he came home with a faint smile, carrying groceries. He kissed my forehead, sat at the table, and asked about my day. I felt warmth in that moment, thinking, this is love, this is partnership. But what I didn't know was that while he was breaking bread with me, he was already breaking my heart in secret. He was sharing his laughter, his whispers, and his most intimate moments with someone else, my own sister. Can you imagine the depth of that betrayal? It wasn't just another woman, not a stranger I could hate and blame. It was my own blood, the girl I grew up with, the one I shared clothes with, fought with, and cried with. I welcomed her into my home, poured her tea, and let her sit at my table, and all the while, behind my back, she was stealing the very life I built, brick by brick. But in those years before I discovered the truth, I never doubted him. When he held my hand at weddings, when he smiled at me in public, and when he leaned close to whisper sweet words, I believed him. I thought we were that couple everyone admired, the ones who stood strong through the test of time. People often told me, you're lucky to have such a loyal husband, and I smiled, proud, blind to the fact that those words were nothing but a cruel joke. I see now that loyalty is not measured by words or appearances. It is measured by actions done in the dark when no one is watching. And in the dark, he was planting daggers in my back, one after another, until my soul was bleeding without me even knowing it. The most painful part is how long I lived in that illusion. Years slipped by, years of my youth, years of my strength, all given to a man who did not see me as enough. I was busy holding the family together, cooking meals and making sacrifices, while he was busy tearing it apart with lies. Sometimes when I sit here in my old age, I ask myself, was I blind or was I simply too trusting? Maybe both, but one thing I know is this: when a woman believes her marriage is strong, she builds her whole world on that belief. She gives her best years, her love, and her loyalty. And when that foundation crumbles, it is not just a house that falls, it is her entire soul. Yes, I spent years believing in something that never truly existed. I lived in a story I thought was mine, only to wake up one day and realize I was nothing more than a character in someone else's cruel play. And that is the truth that haunts me to this day. The day I found out he was cheating with my own sister, my knees gave out under me, my body collapsed, but my soul shattered harder. Some pains don't come with warning. They strike like a storm out of nowhere, and before you even understand what's happening, you are already drowning. That day is carved into my memory like a scar that will never fade. It was an afternoon like any other. I was folding clothes, humming an old song I used to sing in my youth, when a whisper of truth reached me. Not from his lips, no, he would never confess. Betrayal never announces itself gently. It crawls out from the shadows through careless words, through slips people try to cover, and through the pieces of evidence they forget to hide. A neighbor mentioned seeing him and my sister together, too often, too close, too familiar. At first, I laughed it off, the way a woman in love always does. I said, "Oh, you must be mistaken. My sister comes over often. She helps us. She's family." I tried to convince myself the world was lying because the alternative was too painful to accept. But the seed of doubt was planted, and once doubt takes root in a woman's heart, no amount of pretending can stop it from growing. I started noticing things, her visits that stretched too long, his sudden excuses to leave the house, and the way their eyes avoided mine when I entered a room. My heart wanted to deny it, but my soul was already trembling. Then came the truth, cold and sharp. I found a letter hidden carelessly among his things, words that no man should ever write to his wife's sister. Words of affection, promises of love, secrets they thought would remain between them. My hands shook as I read, and with every sentence my chest tightened until I could no longer breathe. I remember clutching that paper, my fingers digging into it as though I could crush the truth away. My legs gave out beneath me, and I fell hard onto the floor. The world around me blurred, and I felt the weight of my own body pressing against the ground, but the heavier weight was inside me. My body collapsed, yes, but my soul broke into 1,000 jagged pieces. Lying there, I heard his voice in my head, all the promises he once made. "You're my only one. We'll grow old together. I'll never hurt you." Each memory stabbed me afresh. And then, behind those promises, I saw my sister's face. My own blood, my companion from childhood, the one I once protected, the one I trusted above all. How could she share in such betrayal? There are moments in life when pain is so sharp, so unbearable that you don't even cry. Tears don't come. Instead, you go numb as if your body shuts down to protect you from the storm. That was me on the floor that day, silent, broken, lifeless, staring into nothing. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a theft of my dignity, my years, and my trust. It was my sister stepping into my home like a shadow and stealing the one thing she knew belonged to me. And it was my husband, the man I devoted my life to, handing himself over to her as if my sacrifices meant nothing. When I finally gathered the strength to stand, I looked into the mirror. My face looked the same, but I was no longer the same woman. Something had died inside me, the woman who believed in love, who trusted her family, who thought loyalty was sacred. She was gone. In her place stood a hollow version of myself, a woman who learned that betrayal doesn't just stab your back, it pierces your soul. Even now, years later, I can still feel that collapse. My knees may have recovered and my body may still move, but the collapse of my soul, that never truly heals, because when betrayal comes from both your husband and your sister, there are no bandages strong enough to mend the wound. And that, my child, is the truth that lives with me till this day. She carried his children while I carried his name. Do you know what kind of humiliation that is for a wife? To share a roof with a man who once vowed to cherish you, and yet to realize another woman, your own sister, was the one carrying his bloodline. That wound is not just deep, my child, it is endless. I was the wife. I stood at the altar. I wore the ring. I signed my life away to him with trust and loyalty. Through sickness and poverty, through hunger and storms, I stood by him. My womb gave him a daughter. My hands fed him meals, and my heart sheltered him when the world turned cold. I gave him my everything, and yet somehow it wasn't enough. And while I was carrying the heavy weight of his name, his responsibilities, his home, his respect in society, my sister was carrying the part of him I never expected to share. His children, her belly grew with life, his life, while mine grew heavy with humiliation. I had become nothing more than a woman sitting in the shadows, clinging to a name that was empty of honor. Do you understand the cruelty of such betrayal? When people look at you, they see the wife. They see the woman who holds the man's place in the world, who represents him in public, and who wears his last name proudly. But behind closed doors, another woman is the one giving him the most intimate gift a woman can give children. And for me, that woman wasn't some stranger I could hate from afar. It was my own sister, my own blood. I remember the whispers families talk, neighbors talk. They thought I didn't hear them, but I did. Their eyes looked at me with pity, some with judgment. I could almost hear their thoughts. Poor woman, she carries his name, but her sister carries his children. And every time I stepped outside, I felt naked in my shame. My name meant nothing anymore. It was hollow like a shell. At night, I would lie beside him, wondering if his thoughts were really with me or with her. Did he imagine her face when he looked at mine? Did he think of those unborn children while I was still cooking meals for him like a faithful wife? My bed felt like a grave, cold and suffocating, because I knew I was sharing him in ways I never agreed to. The deepest cut was knowing I could not even protect myself from this humiliation. How could I speak? How could I confront them? If I exposed him, I would destroy my daughter's image of her father. If I accused my sister, I would tear apart my family's blood ties. I felt trapped in silence, trapped in shame, trapped in a life that wasn't truly mine anymore. Sometimes I would sit alone and think, what did I do wrong? Was I not enough of a woman? Did I fail as a wife? But no, the truth is, betrayal is not the fault of the faithful. Betrayal is the choice of the ungrateful. Still, the questions haunted me, and they kept me awake many nights, staring at the ceiling, feeling my heart sink lower and lower. What makes it worse, child, is the powerlessness of it. A wife carries her husband's name like armor, thinking it will shield her from shame, but when another woman carries his children, that armor turns to ash. It doesn't protect you, it doesn't comfort you. Instead, it becomes a brand of humiliation that you can never wash away. I carried his name, yes. I cooked under it, I prayed under it, and I sacrificed under it. But she carried the proof of his love in her womb, and the world, whether they spoke it aloud or not, knew it. That kind of shame sinks into your bones and never leaves. Even now, when I look back, I can still feel the sting. The weight of his name still hangs heavy on my shoulders, but it is not a badge of honor. It is a chain of humiliation. And every time I think of her children, my sister's children, I remember the cruel truth. She carried his children while I carried his name. And for a wife, there is no pain greater than that. And what cut me deeper than a knife was my only daughter. She knew everything, yet she chose silence. A husband can betray you, a sister can deceive you, and both will leave you bleeding. But when your own child knows the truth and chooses not to shield you from it, that wound is beyond words. That is not just betrayal. It is abandonment of the soul. I raised her with my own hands. I stayed up at nights when she was sick, whispering prayers over her forehead. I skipped meals so she could eat, and I patched torn clothes so she would never feel the shame of poverty. Every sacrifice I made in my life, I made with her in mind. She was not just my daughter. She was my heartbeat, the reason I endured storms without breaking. So when I discovered the truth, that she had known all along about her father and my sister, I felt something inside me shatter louder than any cry. She had walked past me every day, smiled at me, hugged me, called me Mama. While carrying a secret that burned my whole life to ashes, I keep asking myself, why didn't she tell me? Was she afraid? Was she protecting her father? Did she think I was too weak to hear it, or worse, did she simply not care about what it would do to me? Those questions are knives I live with, turning in my chest every day. I remember nights when I noticed her eyes avoiding mine. I thought she was just being distant, the way children grow as they become older, keeping their own worlds. I never imagined that behind those quiet looks was the weight of a secret. She knew the truth but chose silence. She let me sit at the table, pouring tea for her father, for her aunt, and for the very people who were stabbing me in the back, and she said nothing. Do you know how it feels to be the last person in your own family to know the truth, to be the fool everyone is silently watching, waiting to see when you'll finally open your eyes? My daughter's silence made me feel like the whole world was laughing at me. Because if even my child could carry this truth and not whisper it into my ear, then who in this world could I trust? It is a strange kind of death, my child. When your husband betrays you, it kills your marriage. When your sister deceives you, it kills your bond of blood. But when your daughter hides the truth, it kills your motherhood. It makes you question whether all your years of love, all your sacrifices, were worth anything at all. I wanted to believe she was on my side. I wanted to believe that at least my child, my only daughter, would hold my hand through the fire, but she didn't. She let me burn while she stood in the shadows, silent. And that silence was louder than any scream. There were days I looked at her and thought, maybe she believed she was protecting me. Maybe in her young mind she thought silence was kindness, but silence is not protection. Silence is poison. It eats at the heart of the one who deserves the truth, and by the time it's revealed, the damage cannot be undone. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I see her as a little girl tugging on my clothes, asking me to protect her from nightmares. And I always did. I chased away her fears and I held her close until she slept in peace. But when it was my turn to be haunted, when the nightmare was mine, she turned away. She left me to face the darkness alone. That is a pain I will never heal from. A husband's betrayal may leave scars, a sister's betrayal may leave shame, but a daughter's silence, it breaks something so sacred inside you that it can never be mended. It makes you feel as though love itself betrayed you. Yes, my child, what cut me deeper than a knife was not just the act of betrayal, but the silence of the one I loved most, and I will carry that silence with me to my grave. I kept looking at her, wondering how my own blood could watch me sit in darkness, blind to the truth. You know, a mother's eyes are always searching her child's face, even when she says nothing. And when I looked at my daughter in those days, my heart screamed for answers my lips could not form. Every time she smiled at me, I questioned it. Was it real or was it pity? When she hugged me, I wondered if her arms were holding me out of love or out of guilt for the secret she kept buried. She sat at my table, she ate from my hands, she laid her head on my lap, and all the while she knew her father and my sister were tearing my life apart behind my back. Do you know what it feels like to sit in your own home, surrounded by people you love, yet realize you were the only one living in the shadows? Everyone else could see the truth, everyone but me. And the worst part is that my own daughter, my flesh and blood, let me live in that blindness. She chose silence when her words could have saved me from humiliation. There were moments I caught her eyes when my sister would walk in, or when her father would make excuses to leave the house. I thought she looked uneasy, but I brushed it aside. I told myself, she's just tired, she's just growing up. I never imagined that uneasiness was the weight of knowing her mother was being betrayed. I replayed those moments later, over and over, like a woman torturing herself. Why didn't I see it? Why didn't I force the truth from her eyes? But no matter how much I search my memories, I can't change what happened. The truth sat in her heart like a locked chest, and I was left wandering in darkness, blind and broken. What wounds me most, child, is that a mother raises her child with the hope that one day, when the world turns cruel, her child will stand by her side. I thought my daughter would be my shield, my comfort, and my honest voice when everyone else failed me. Instead, she became part of the silence that destroyed me. I kept wondering, did she think I was too weak to bear it? Did she think I would collapse if I knew? But I did collapse anyway, because the truth doesn't wait politely. It breaks out, and when it does, it crushes harder than any secret ever could. And when I finally collapsed, when I finally learned, the pain was doubled because she had known all along and still let me fall. Sometimes I tell myself maybe she was torn between two loves, the love for her father and the love for me. Maybe she didn't want to choose sides, but even if that's true, shouldn't a child's heart lean toward the one who never betrayed her? Shouldn't she have whispered, even in the quiet of the night, "Mama, open your eyes"? But she never did, and so I was left sitting in darkness, a blind woman in her own home, while my own daughter, my blood, watched. She let me serve tea to my sister, she let me smile at my husband, and she let me dream of a family that never existed. She let me live as a fool. The humiliation of betrayal is heavy, but the humiliation of realizing your child kept you blind, that is unbearable. I carried her in my womb for 9 months. I fed her from my own body, and I gave her my life, and she gave me silence. She gave me blindness. She gave me the cruelest gift of all, ignorance wrapped in love. Yes, child, I kept looking at her, hoping her eyes would speak the words her lips refused to, but they never did, and so I remained in the darkness until the day the truth struck me down. That darkness was not made by strangers, but by my own blood, my own daughter. And that is a truth no mother should ever have to live with. A husband's betrayal can wound you, but a child's silence that destroys you from the inside out. I say this because I have lived both pains and I know the difference. When a husband betrays you, the wound is sharp. Yes, it bleeds and it humiliates you, but at least you know where the knife came from. You can point at him and say, "This man broke me." But when your child chooses silence, when the one you nurtured, loved, and protected decides to let you drown in lies, you don't even know where to point your pain. It eats you alive from the inside. My husband's betrayal was like fire. It burned hot and fast, searing my trust and leaving ashes behind. But my daughter's silence was like poison. You don't see it right away. It seeps slowly, drop by drop, into your veins until one day you realize you are no longer whole. You're just a hollow shell moving through life while something inside you has already died. I could have forgiven him maybe in time, not forgotten, no, but forgiven. Men are weak, they stumble, they fall into sin. It doesn't excuse it, but it makes it explainable. But my daughter, the one who called me mama, the one I carried in my arms when her legs were too small to walk, the one I stayed awake for when fever shook her little body. How do you explain silence from her? How do you forgive a child who let her mother be destroyed piece by piece without even lifting her voice to warn her? Every time I looked at her, the questions haunted me. Was my love not enough? Did she not trust me to survive the truth? Did she not think I deserved honesty? It's one thing to be betrayed by a husband. You expect him to hurt you in some way because marriage is full of risks. But children, you raise them believing they will always be your safest place, that no matter how cruel the world becomes, they will never let you stand alone in the storm. Her silence was a betrayal that had no reason. A betrayal that had no face, no voice, just emptiness. It sat between us like a ghost at the table. When she smiled at me, I wondered if she was smiling out of love or smiling because she pitied the fool I was. When she hugged me, I wondered if her arms carried guilt more than affection. And when she said, "Mama, I love you," the words stung, because how could love exist without truth? Do you know what silence does, child? It makes you question every memory. I started to wonder if she ever truly loved me, or if I had only been loving her alone, carrying both our shares of affection. That is what silence does. It turns your own heart against you, makes you doubt the very bond you once thought was unbreakable. I often sat in my room at night, staring at the walls, whispering to God, "Why, Lord, why did my daughter stay silent? Did I raise her wrong? Did I fail as a mother?" And the silence of the night echoed her silence back at me. No answers, just emptiness. When a husband cheats, people gather around you and say, "Poor woman, men are like this." They comfort you, they sympathize. But when your child stays silent, no one understands. No one sees the depth of that wound. It is not a story you can tell proudly. It is a wound you carry alone, one that festers inside you, invisible to others, but deadly all the same. Even now, as an old woman, I tell you this truth. Betrayal from a husband made me cry, but my daughter's silence took away my tears. It left me numb. Because how do you cry when your own blood is the reason for your blindness? How do you heal when the very child you raised chose to let you bleed quietly? Yes, a husband's betrayal can wound you. It can scar you, humiliate you, and even break your marriage. But a child's silence, that destroys you from the inside out, because it is not just silence. It is the breaking of a sacred bond, the shattering of the belief that your child will always protect you. And once that belief is gone, you are never whole again. Now I live with the bitter truth that the ones you trust most are the ones who can break you beyond repair. It is not an easy truth to swallow, my child. It sits in the throat like a stone. It weighs on the chest like iron. And yet it is the only truth I carry with me into my old age. When you are young, you believe trust is a gift you give freely to the people closest to you. A husband, a sister, a child. Aren't they supposed to be the ones who deserve your blind faith? I believed that. I believed trust was the foundation of love, and I gave it without holding anything back. But what I didn't know was that the closer you hold people, the sharper their knives feel when they cut you. My husband, he was supposed to be my partner in life, the one who shared my burdens, the one who carried my dreams alongside his. Instead, he betrayed me with my own blood. My sister, she was the one I grew up with, the one I defended from the world, the one I trusted with every secret of my girlhood. Yet she is the one who stole the man I married, carrying his children while I carried only his name. And my daughter, oh, my daughter, the child of my womb, the breath of my life, the one person I thought would never let me stand alone in the dark, she chose silence, and her silence broke me more than their sins ever did. So here I sit old and tired, and all I can tell you is this: the cruelest betrayals are not from strangers. Strangers cannot wound you deeply. They don't know your heart, and they don't hold your trust. Only the people you let closest, only the ones you open your heart to, have the power to crush it beyond repair. I sometimes think of my younger self, the woman who believed love was enough to keep a man faithful, who believed blood ties kept a sister loyal, and who believed motherhood guaranteed a daughter's honesty. How naive I was, how innocent. That woman no longer exists. She died the day I learned the truth. What remains of her is only a shell that carries memories, scars, and lessons too heavy for most hearts. There are nights I sit alone, staring at the shadows on the wall, and I ask myself, what is left of trust once it is broken? Can you rebuild it? Can you glue together the shattered pieces? No, child. Once trust is broken by the people you love most, it doesn't just crack, it turns to dust. And no matter how hard you try, you cannot gather dust back into the shape it once held. And so I live with caution now. I smile less, I speak less, and I trust less, not because I want to be this way, but because betrayal teaches you to protect what little remains of your soul. Once you have been broken by the ones closest to you, you learn to carry walls inside your chest. Walls that keep out not just enemies, but sometimes even love. But the saddest part is this: even though I know they broke me, even though I know they do not deserve my tears, I still love them. That is the curse of the betrayed heart. You bleed for the ones who cut you. You pray for the ones who left you blind. You ache for the ones who turned your life into ruins. Love doesn't vanish with betrayal. It lingers, twisted and painful, reminding you of what could have been. So, my child, if you remember anything from my story, remember this: the ones you trust most are the ones who can break you beyond repair. Be careful with your trust. Do not give it blindly as I did. Protect your heart, guard your soul, and understand that sometimes even the warmest smile hides the sharpest dagger. I am old now, and I know my days are numbered, but the bitter truth I carry to my grave is simple. Love can heal many wounds, but betrayal from those closest to you, that never heals. It leaves you broken in places no one can see, and once you are broken there, you remain broken forever.